Hey, everybody, it's Mike from Here are the Watchmen. And today on our show, we have an incredible guest. We have Mr. John Pounders. I mean, John is like way out there. He's like doing the deal for Jesus. I mean, he is an amazing guy. John, thank you so much for joining us today.
Mike, thank you so much for having me on. Can you hear me all right? My microphone just went out. Can you hear me, Mike?
Hello, yeah, Mike. No, you're good. You're good.
Okay.
You're good.
Okay, good to go. Sorry about that. Since you're recording, I'll kind of come in a little bit. My mic kept getting, like the red dot kept going mute over and over again. So not sure exactly what happened there. But yeah, man, I appreciate that a ton. That's really kind of you to say. And I appreciate all the work you're doing as well. I've seen so much fruit come out of the conferences that you do, just from meeting people that have been there and become a believer because of going, or just being edified because of the conferences you guys put on. And so it's an honor for me to be on your show, man. I appreciate it.
Well, hey, John, so let's take a look at something that's kind of, I mean, there's a lot of people out there who think that, like, when you come to Jesus, you just like one day wake up and, oh, you're saved. But you and I have had an interesting road to come to the Lord. I mean, I was saved on the floor of a jail room cell. I mean, that's I mean, people who have watched my show know about that. How about you? What was your journey to Jesus?
Mine was really the same thing. I was on the floor of a jail room cell, crying out, asking if he was real. And I think sometimes that's the best altar for people is the jail room floor. But my life kind of started out. I grew up in a home, Christian home. My parents were both really good parents. They obviously worked a lot. We didn't have a lot of money. We grew up in South Texas, down by the border of Mexico, and I was into a lot of really cool stuff down there, country stuff, riding horses. We did, team roping and rodeos and stuff like that. And when I was 14, when I was 14, we moved to Indiana, and my life changed drastically because we went from living in the country life to my dad taking a job. He's in ministry that hardly paid anything. So my mom had to work all the time, and we lived in the hood. So we went from living out, near the rodeo grounds to living in the hood growing up there. And so my life changed a lot at that point because I went from being able to ride my horse out in the country to run in the neighborhood with the hood kids and getting into trouble. So that everything changed. And that was one of the points of the downfall in my life. And really that what led to where I'm at now. But so I continued to go to school. I continued to start to do the things that I normally would have never done. I would have never done those things before. In fact, the first few times I did all those things, it just really convicted me. But, as time goes on, your conscience becomes more seared, and you start to connect with things and think, I really enjoy doing this bad stuff, but the Bible says it's wrong. People say it's wrong. My parents say it's wrong. And I started to feel like it was more of a control mechanism than anything. Like there was no real faith for that in me. It wasn't like I was following Jesus for the right reasons or for any reason at all, really, other than because I was taught that. And that's how I felt. And so I decided at around the age of 15 that I was going to do what I wanted to do. And I was going to continue to do that all throughout life. I was tired of being poor, living in the hood. I was tired of just a lot of things. I mean, I was like, I'm going to take control of this because I can't stand this. I went to a private school when I was, that age, and all my friends were like rich, you know what I'm saying? And I'm poor living in the hood, and I wanted that, that was what I wanted. I wanted money. I wanted that. And so that kind of took my life, I'm leaving out quite a few things, but just to kind of give you a broad spectrum of what happened, that took my life in the direction of my God being money. And so just like in your life, when God becomes your money or money becomes your God, anything's possible. You'll do anything to serve that God. You'll do whatever it takes to get that God closer to you and get more of it. Just like people that are hardcore believers, they'll do anything they can for, their God to get more of him, get closer to him. And so that was the way I was with money. And so that led me down a path of, robberies, armed robberies, drug dealing, all kinds of schemes and scams, or whatever you can name it, and we had our own little crew of people that we did these things. We operated, and did really what we wanted to do when we wanted to do it. And we were pretty successful at it at that point. But when you do those kind of things, not to glorify any of those things, because honestly, everything that I mentioned to you leads to really just heartache, pain, death, prison, because all of my friends almost that I was around during that time, that's where they're at right now. And so during that time period, I start to, your mind becomes divided. You're living kind of a double life. I was living a double life with my family, with what was going on, and my brain started to get divided. I had become married during this time. This was before I really got into the whole criminal organizations and really feeding my way through. But my wife, she didn't know very much about what was going on in my life, but the more she found out, the more she was appalled by everything that was going on, and the more we argued. And so I remember this is the kind of particular time period where all this stuff happened. But um, we were arguing one night, and she was done with me. That was it. She was like, "I'm done with you. You're just you're destroying people's lives. You're destroying your own life, and I'm done." And so I started to think that night. She left, and I started to think that night, and I'm thinking about, the friends that I had. I had a friend when 15 years old that, blew his brains out. I had friends OD and die from drugs that, and I had a lot of the friends that I grew up with, they seem like good kids, but they're out there selling drugs for me. And then next thing you know, they're in prison or they're this and that. And I started thinking about all the people that I had affected around me and how it was, and I felt really toxic. I felt like, man, I've destroyed so many people's lives in my pursuit to get what I want. And I feel like I don't want to live anymore. I do not, I'm done. I can't stop it. So I don't know what else to do. I've just, the only person I really truly loved at that time pushed herself away from me. And I didn't even really truly love her because I didn't know what love was. But in my mind, she was the one I loved and everything, but I didn't show her that I loved her. It's kind of like, a lot of people that are Christians, they like say they love God, but they never show it. That's the same kind of scenario with my wife. I said I loved her, but you couldn't tell by the actions that I was, the actions I was making. And so I was going to end my life at that point. That was it. I was like, I'm done. I'm tired of this. I've got everything that I wanted. I had I had a yacht, I had house, car, everything. I had everything, and it wasn't making me happy. So I just figured there was nothing else out there. And so I took a gun and I pointed it at my head. And as I'm getting ready to pull the trigger, I had this vision in my mind. It was like almost like a shock of electricity that I'm standing, and then I look up and there's the most high, I guess you could describe, just this big bright thing. And I fell down on my face and I started weeping because I just felt so little. And I put down the gun at that point because after that I was completely shook. And that night, as I'm laying in bed, I put it down. I didn't know what to make of it. I was, kind of just, just in a sad state, I guess you could say. I have a dream, and in the dream, I wake up in this dream, and I look outside, and I hear explosions, and I see like fire all in the sky, almost like something you see here in Revelation. That's the first thing I thought of when I saw all that stuff. And I remember looking next to me, and there was this Bible sitting on my stand. That's usually where I kept like my pistol and like maybe some alcohol or something, like just something else. I never had a Bible there, but there's a Bible there, and I go to grab this Bible, and I feel like somebody punched me in the stomach as hard as they could, and I fell to the ground, and I heard a voice say, "It's too late." And so I woke up, and I was actually on the ground holding my stomach when I woke up. I got back in the bed. I got up a little bit later that day, and I'm thinking about all this stuff. This stuff's going through my mind constantly. Like, what is going on here? Something's happening. I don't know what to do. And so I went to this thing called Ski Day. They had this thing where everybody basically in the county where I live that has boats, they all get together and they go out to this sandbar out in the middle of the river, and everybody parties it down. And so I'm out there, everybody's out there. I'm sitting on the boat, still really depressed, contemplating suicide, contemplating what just happened. And sitting out there on my own boat, just like a sad puppy, I guess you could say. I mean, when I think about it, it's ridiculous, but I'm looking back on it. And so we went back that day. To make a long story short, we ended up in jail. My friend of mine had a bunch of drugs in the car. We ended up in the jail for a few nights. You know, they do the 3-night stay where you investigate everything going on like that. And I'm already like deeply on drugs. I'm on cocaine. You know, I had been not real heavily on cocaine, but I was on it enough that it made me feel like I wanted it again. You know, I'd smoked cigarettes for years, 2-3 packs a day. I was on all kinds of pharmaceutical drugs for bipolar disorders, like antidepressant medicines, all kinds of like Ativans and Xanaxes and stuff. I was on so many, like a gambit of drugs. I mean, I don't know how, looking back, I can't think of how I function every day like that. But I go to jail and I'm going through withdrawals. I mean, I'm in there and I'm laying on the floor. There's like 20 something guys, holding cells. Sometimes they'll have 20, 30 guys in these holding cells. And I'm laying in these cells and there's people just irritating the fire out of me. I'm struggling not to choke somebody because I'm going through these withdrawals, and I've got guys laying, up next to me and their feet are brushing me. And I'm just like, just going crazy in there. And I'm like, man, I don't know if I'm going to make it out of here without doing something bad and getting in here longer. And I just start thinking, and like the third day comes along and I'm starting to feel almost a little bit more sane, but at the same time, I'm still like really, hurting inside, hurting all over, and my mind's hurting. My spiritual state is even hurt worse than my physical state. And I start to pray. I start reading stuff. There's you know how people scratch stuff into the wall, and I start reading all these different things, and all of a sudden I just kind of think like I remember hearing about some of the stuff that I experienced not long ago, and what if it is real? Like, what if all this stuff is real and I'm passing it by for my own selfish intentions? I'm passing everything by because whatever, for whatever reason. So I think, if there is something, if God's trying to get my attention, I need to know. And so I cried out and I said, God, if you're real, I want to know. I want to know. And if you are, I will serve you forever. I will serve you. And so as no sooner than I make that prayer, I hear a banging on the cell, and they call my name out, and I come out of the cell. They take me into a detective's office, and I'm thinking they're just going to be like, they're going to try to question me. This is my last day here. They got to get something before they send me off, or whatever, because they have the 3-day investigation time. You're not allowed to make any calls out. Like, so nobody in my family even knew where I was for 3 days. My wife just assumed because of what happened, I went off to the strip clubs, or went out on went out on a circuit for a few days. And people that do drugs will know what I'm talking about. You're gone for several days at a time. And so I remember getting in there, sitting down, and I'm just kind of out of it. I look up, and there's a guy that I remember from when I was younger, because I used to play in bands, and he was in this metal band called Drag the Stick. And before that, he wasn't a believer, but he started this Christian metal band called Drag the Sticks, which is talking about the cross. And he had a piercing in his eyebrow, or right here, right around here, and he had long dreads when I knew him. And I look up, and this guy, he didn't have the dreads anymore. He didn't have the piercing, but he's a detective in the drug task force. And he says, man, I heard your name on the scanner. He's like, I knew that you were in here. He's like, I just came in because I wanted to pray for you. He's like, I was laying in bed with my wife, and I felt like I had to come pray for you. He's like, I don't know any other way to describe it. And at that moment, I remembered the prayer that I made, and I'm like, this is something, because this doesn't happen. I mean, he ended up getting in trouble for doing that, and he ended up getting in trouble for doing that a lot for other people too. But he came and prayed for me, and I felt the Spirit just move over me, man, and all my addiction just fled my body, which was amazing, because it was really bothering me and hurting me. And some of those stuff I was on could have killed me from not being on it, because you can't just quit some of those drugs cold turkey like that. Those pharmaceutical drugs, which are seem more dangerous to me than some of the street drugs I was on. And it left, and I started weeping, just like I've never wept, in years, because I wanted to be hard, or my heart was hardened. I just hadn't wept. And I wept like just a sobbing baby right in front of these detectives. And they're looking at me like, what's going on here? And my heart just changed, everything about my spirit, what I wanted in life, what I wanted to be, who I wanted to serve, like my selfish ambitions just kind of like jumped out the back of me. It was such an experience that I don't really know how to put into words, because it's, unless you feel that experience, it's really hard to explain. But that happened to me. And then, as I got out of jail and went home, I started singing praises that I hadn't heard since I was a kid in church, like, hymnal praises that I remember hearing, just old school stuff. And my wife's like kind of looking at me like, what is going on here? This is not my husband that I know of, because she had come home and she had been worried about me, and I went to jail. And so that was kind of where my path started down this. I mean, there's a lot more. Obviously, it takes time to kind of renew your mind in the word and all that stuff. But that was the beginning to the path. And that was about 8 years ago. And this is where I'm at today. So.
Well, John, that is, I mean, you and I mean, we're like brothers from another mother. I mean, because I did 6 months in jail. Well, actually, if you quantify the whole thing, a year in jail. But I mean, the thing is that Christ came to me one day, and it was overwhelming. I mean, now, what was that experience like for you when Christ actually came to you and said, I want to save you because there's work that you have to do for me? What was that like?
It was humbling, to say the least, because I felt that I didn't deserve it. I mean, there was, I knew what I deserved, and I still to this day know what I deserved. I deserved death or prison. That's what I had sowed my whole life. I'd sowed seeds of wickedness. And so I was just humbled. I was thankful, because I knew now that I actually had a path that I could walk down that wasn't my own. I mean, when people really think about, the path they're on. Okay. So the path I was on was a self-pleasing path. I wanted to get whatever I wanted to get. And that's what I wanted to do. But that path that's not who I was made to be. And I knew that, but I knew that that also, I didn't want to be poor. I didn't want to have all these issues. I didn't want all this stuff to go in, but I knew that wasn't who I was made to be. And it's deep down inside. It's something everybody has, this passion to know who they are. Everybody has this passion to know what they're made for. And when I finally gave in to him, I realized he created me. And when he came to me, I realized that I had to do what he wanted me to do. And it was a refreshing thing, because at this point I knew that there was something bigger than me guiding my path. It was the most refreshing thing that I could think of at that time, because I was ready for that. I was ready to walk down his path, because my path had gotten me nothing but pain and sorrow. And it was exciting exciting and humbling, to say the least. And I was so thankful. I mean, I can't put into words how thankful I am for everything, because when you realize you don't deserve anything, everything's a bonus. Just another day is a bonus. Just anything. I mean, even a car that barely works is a bonus, because I don't deserve it. I don't deserve my children. I don't deserve anything that I have. So just overwhelming thankfulness, more than anything, I think. So.
Well, now, John, I mean, let's take a look at this. I mean, God has called upon you to do something very unique. And I got to tell you, folks, John is like doing something incredible for the kingdom. And what you're doing is you're bringing to children the word of God. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, this is a new project that I am really invested in, because I do have children. I have a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and I have a new baby. She's only a couple months old. And, I've been doing adult programming for a long time now, but I started really thinking about something. A friend of mine a few years ago had this dream, and he believed it was prophetic for him. But now that I see what he's talking about, it was prophetic for me. That's why he told me about it. He may not have known that at the time, and I didn't know it at the time, but he knew it. And in this prophetic dream, he's walking through this church. Okay. And he sees the adults are just like, raising their hands. Everything's great with them. They're completely, sold out to the Most High, trying their best to serve him. But then you go by the kids section, and there was tombs in the kids section. Okay. Tombs, and nothing going on in the, and it was like, when I heard him say that, dude, it just, it blew my mind. And then to this day, I'm seeing that kind of take place in the church. And I know a lot of people would disagree with me or whatnot, but I can see when I, going into churches. I used to own a Christian hip hop band, and I actually used to go in there and preach when our guys would go in there. And this is something that I saw in every church. The youth had it's almost like I don't know what was going on with the church, but they had kind of like cut the budget for the youth. They've cut um, anything to do with being able to really truly reach them. They had their camps and stuff like that, but the youth were crumbling in almost every church that I've seen. And not only that, but even the little children on almost every church I've seen. But I see it also in the movement, with the people that I'm involved with out with YouTube. I see that the children don't have anything. And I know my children, like trying to find children's programming, I told you earlier, was like trying to find needles in haystacks, because you can find them here and there, but being able to like just let them sit and watch something is kind of important as an adult, to be able to sometimes be able to have your children to where they can sit and focus on something that's going to be good for them. Because I know my children, my boys are buck wild. I mean, they're both into jujitsu, boxing, and they love running around, jumping on trampolines, running through everywhere, getting in everything. So those times when I can sit them down in front of the TV for a few minutes and enjoy, and my wife can tell you the same thing, and just enjoy a chance to sit down and drink a cup of coffee without them bouncing off the walls, is a valuable time. But you can't do it if you're feeding them with stuff that's garbage. I mean, because we know that out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. But it also says to guard your heart above all else in the scripture. And so when we're putting things into our body, into our mind, that are wicked from the world, guess what's going to come out later? Wickedness from the world is going to come out later. And so we have to feed ourselves with good things, word. And this is especially valuable to children more than it even is to us, because they soak everything up. They soak it all up, and they're we know what the world's out there doing, because we've studied this stuff. And you've interviewed a lot of the guys from Skywatch, and you've interviewed and talked to a lot of those guys, and they'll tell you the same thing, that there is a programming going on with our youth and with the society in general, with the stuff that they watch. And that's why we do what we do. That's why Skywatch does what they do. That's why we do what we do. That's why a lot of these ministries do what we do, because we see that they've used this programming. They don't call it programming for nothing, because they're programming your mind. They've used this to really destroy society. As I watch the Olympics, I watch it on, I don't have cable, but I have this Roku box or whatever that has like some kind of program where you can get like a live version of the Olympics. And as I'm watching the Olympics, every commercial is a programming commercial. Every commercial is trying to feed your mind to think a certain way. And that's how it is when your children are watching TV too. May not recognize it, but that's exactly what's going on. And so the need to produce children's content is, to me, is a must right now. It has to happen. And so I'm not the best, most qualified person in the world to do it or anything like that. But I'm trying my best at it. This newest one was featuring my 6-year-old son. He's going looking for dinosaurs, looking for dinosaur tracks, looking for all these things, because when I have him watch a dinosaur show here, it tells you that there's millions of years of evolution in between dinosaurs and humanity, whereas the fossil record shows differently. So I'm going to make sure that there's something where children can look at and say, this is what is true, because we actually went and we interviewed the archaeologists. We went to the sites where we could see the humanity and dinosaurs in the same layers. We went to these places. We went to see Aaron Judkins out of Glen Rose, Texas, which is an archaeologist there. There's tons of tracks. The world's longest length of tracks is there in the Paluxy River area right there. We went and saw those. We went to talk to Joe Taylor, which is he has a fossil museum, the largest Christian fossil museum there in Mount Blanco, Texas. And we went to that, and he showed us that, and he showed us all the dinosaurs that he had a chance to work on. And he's the one that actually molded the skeletons for Watchers, the Watchers 4, and did all these different things. He went and got them cast for him. He's done all that stuff his whole life. And we interviewed that, and then we talked to different people so that we could get to the bottom of it, so that we could show the children something. But we're also going to add cartoons to it, do a lot of different things. And this is not as an exciting thing for maybe us adults to hear about, but I can guarantee you this, that our children need this stuff. They need it. And we hope to be able to do more of it. I mean, I'm hope to one day be able to have producers that'll do nothing but children's programming, and we're moving in that direction to where we can kind of branch out to different things. But um, just a passion for it, man. After that prophetic dream, really, I feel like it was prophetic to me. I mean, not everything's prophetic. I get that, and a lot of people kind of shun the idea of prophecy or whatever. But when you see something like that and you actually see it in real life as you're going out there, um, making ministry moves, and you're out there witnessing and connecting with people, when you see that prophetic dream playing out and you see the youth kind of just not even caring about what's going on, then it really comes to life in that area. So that's kind of where we're at, but with that, and hoping to do a lot more with it. So
Well, John, I got to tell you, I disagree with one thing that you said. You are a warrior for Jesus. I mean, you really are. You're out there doing it. You're in the trenches. You're making things happen. Now, I mean, what would you say if there is one thing that you could say to our listeners? What do they need to teach their kids?
wisdom. I mean, obviously you can't not teach them about wisdom and foolishness. The difference between the two. I think that's one important place to start, but you have to teach them about Jesus too, and about who he is. I mean, one to condense it to one thing is hard. Obviously, they need to have faith in the Messiah. They need to have faith in Jesus. That's something that childlike faith is not something that is hard for them to accept or impart, but they also need to know what foolishness and wisdom is. And one thing I'm doing with my children is I'm going through the book of Proverbs, and they're young. So obviously, the book of Proverbs has got a lot of stuff that's hard for them to understand. But when you go verse by verse with it and you show them what each word means and what matters, what it's talking about here, these are important steps in life, because as a young man, as an older man, or as a young woman or older woman, you have to gauge everything that you do in life. It says train a child in the way they should go, and when they're older they won't depart from it. But if you don't train a child in the way they should go, then how do you expect them to not depart from it? Because anybody could just say, you need to believe in Jesus, and you go on your way, and then you let your kids, they're being programmed by school teachers, they're being programmed by college teachers their whole life, and you've told them that, but they're on their way. But what really needs to happen is you need to really truly train your child in the way they should go. And training involves reading the scriptures together and understanding what is expected of us, as humanity. Just like if I'm telling my child, this is expected of you. I don't want you doing this. I want you doing this. And this is what I want from you. I have to explain that to them understandably. And when the book of Proverbs, that's one thing that I really, especially if you have young men, just really go through that. And because you can ask my children, what is this behavior? Is this foolish or wise? And that's a simple way of teaching stuff. Is this behavior foolish or wise? Because the book of Proverbs covers all that. But when you can break it down to them that way, they can understand, I don't want to be a fool. I want to be wise, because this is the way I need to live my life. So I hope that answered the question. I know I kind of rambled there for a second, but I think it's important to teach them the difference between wisdom and foolishness, because that's lacking today. You have children eating Tide Pods right now. You have, which is ridiculous. It's the most craziest thing I've ever seen, is a child or, young people deciding they want to eat something that's supposed to be cleaning their clothes or whatever, or their dishes. And you have children that don't know what identity, if they're male or female. You have children that are believing this lie of evolution that they're hearing in school. They're believing everything that they hear from their teachers because they don't have parent figures. You've got children that are out there killing each other. We just recently moved from the neighborhood that I grew up in from the time I was 14 till a year ago. And, we live out in the country now, but that was my hood over there. And you see these children killing each other, man. These kids you've seen growing up from little babies out there shooting each other in the face. And just, that's the kind of stuff that the world is leading our children towards. So we have to take control as parents, take control as ministers or whatever, to help this stuff, because That's the role model, man. These kids, their role model, who their role model is? People like 50 Cent, people like Jay-Z, people like all these multi-millionaire rappers out there that haven't probably ever pulled a trigger in their life. Maybe 50 Cent probably has, but some of them never pulled a trigger in their life ever, but they're rapping and telling you to do it. And you're doing it out there in the street, and that's their father figure there, because most of the and this is the sad true reality, and this isn't racism, this is true in the hood, whether it's white, black, Mexican, whatever. Most of the fathers are in prison, and you have women trying to raise these children, and they're raising monsters, not because they're not good mothers, not because the kids don't have a father figure. Their father figure is what they see on TV. These, Lil Wayne's, I think he went to Harvard or whatever. He's not out there popping pistols. He's not out there doing this stuff, but he's out there telling you to do it, and he's living high on the hog off his album sales by that stuff. And that's the people that these kids look up to. And we have to do something as ministers, as parents. This world is really taking a sharp curve towards the deep end, in my opinion. I mean, I'm only 35 years old, but I can tell you this: when I was a kid, to be able to see people openly doing some of the stuff they're doing now wouldn't happen. It wouldn't happen. You would not see this stuff, but now it's common. And in fact, I saw somewhere that this lady was really upset, thinking about suing somebody just because he wouldn't accept her as a transvestite, because he was actually a he, and the guy didn't want her, and he didn't want to date her because of that. So she was really mad about that. So she was deciding she wanted to sue him over it, for discrimination. And so we're coming down to a world where our kids have to grow up and make a decision if they'd rather possibly go to jail or date a transsexual or trade a transvestite. They may not even know who a male and a female is by the time they grow up, because how will they disclose it? How will we know? We don't know, because everybody's doing this stuff. And so things are getting crucial, very crucial.
Well, John, I mean, I find it fascinating. You're 35 years old. That's a baby to me. I mean, you can see the gray hair here and the gray in here. So I'm on the other end of the spectrum. But, our kids are our future. And so we need to teach them somehow to make a better world. What would you do?
I mean, I think take control of their education is, Malcolm X said something, and I don't propagate anything Malcolm X says other than this right here. There's a few things he said that were pretty profound, but he said, never let the enemy teach your children. And that has become a major tool in their arsenal, is teaching your children. And whether it be by Hollywood, by public school system, by, the liberal, university system, they are taking your child and they are the one training them in the way that they think they should go. And you have to educate your child. You have to do that. You have to take control. And I know this world has made it tough, because the roles have been switched almost, where women are the breadwinners now. The roles have been switched to where they are, in control, and women are allowed to, kind of like expected to be manly almost, and do these things. And so then the man loses his place in the house, and the woman loses her place in the house. And it's amazing when we do things the way God made us to do, how much more harmony can be in our lives. But the education system has failed us, so we have to take control of educating our own children. And people need to start going out there and having children. And a lot of Christians I know, well, we don't want to have children in this world, it's bad. But what does the Bible say? It says, be fruitful and multiply. Guess what? If you're not having, if you're not out there doing that, that's understandable. If you can't have children, I get it. Adopt some children. Do whatever you got to do to make, to populate this world with more people. The Muslims are populating. They're populating about 4 or 5 kids per couple, and before you know it, there's gonna be way more of them. But the Bible says, be fruitful, multiply. Teach your children in the way you should go. And I'm not saying, like, I'm not somebody that says you need to go out and have 50 kids. I'm not trying to say that, but I'm just saying that, instead of sitting back and letting the world take shape the way it's taking shape, you have to do something. And I know a lot of people have taken the route of just sitting back and looking from their armchair. They're sitting back watching, but that's not what we're called to do. We're called to be kings and priests. Okay. And so part of being a king and priest is not always having a kingdom, but it's making the area you're at better, whether it's your neighborhood, whether it's your household, whether it's your workplace. You have a responsibility as a child of the Most High. This is a mystery in the Bible. It says how a mystery about the sons of God. If we knew who we were in Him, there's much more to be done. And you have power. You have power now that you are in the Spirit. You have this fire, this Holy Spirit, that you have a power to influence and change the area around you. And that's what we need to kind of take hold of and do. I realize that in the church, they don't expect that out of you. They want you to, this is their idea of evangelism. Go out there and find you a friend and bring them to church. That's their idea of evangelism. It's not really like go out there and make a difference in your community. Go out there and test the system, challenge the system, and do the things that the Bible says instead of what the world says. If that was the sermon, this world would be changed, because you have thousands sometimes of people sitting in these pews watching their preacher. Okay, I've been to a concert by Rage Against the Machine, and this guy knew how to move a crowd. He knew how, like, he literally had the concert got shut down because he riled these people up enough to start destroying stuff. Okay, that is moving a crowd. When you're a pastor, you have a responsibility to move that crowd to do something positive and move that crowd to go out and make a difference. When you have 1,000 people sitting in the seats, if you could get half of those people in your community to go out and make this community a better place, your community would change without a doubt. But that's not the message. That's never been the message, at least in any church that I've ever been in. That's not the message. I'm sure there's some like Southern Baptist Church or smaller churches that are out there firing people up to do it, but you don't see that in these big churches, and it makes you wonder why. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah, but what you're saying, John, is you're asking people to activate their faith. I mean, get out there and get busy and do the deal. I mean, that's the whole thing. I mean, we can all sit around and watch YouTubes. I mean, thank you for watching this YouTube, but get off up the couch, get out there and actually do something. I mean, that's the important thing. Now, John, I mean, where do you stand on homeschooling?
I didn't hear that last part. What would you say?
Where do you stand on homeschooling?
Well, we have we homeschool our children, our two boys, and our little girl. She's not old enough to be in school yet, but we homeschool them. I did let them go to a preschool at this church that was down the road, because it's good to kind of like, help them get a little bit of structure, realize what's going on. But we homeschool our children, and I think it's important because, first off, I mean, they learn so much quicker. I mean, my oldest son, he's 6 years old, but he's already reading, doing math, and doing all these different things. Whereas when I took him to the most expensive school in the area, which is where he went prior to that, and I'm not bashing that school, they're a good school. It's a Christian school. They're doing a lot of good things for a lot of people, and I think that that's a good second step, a good second resort if you can't homeschool, is taking them to a Christian school. But you know, the level of learning versus the time invested in teaching them as a homeschool is your child's going to be a step above everybody else as far as learning goes. The only problem I see sometimes in homeschooling is sometimes the kids are so sheltered that by the time that they're 18 or whatever, they are ready to jump out in the world 2 feet, and and then they see the traps, they see the cheese. They see the cheese, they don't see the trap. They see the cheese that the devil dangles in front of them, but they don't see that thing getting ready to smack them on the head because they've been so sheltered. And so I think and homeschool is great, but you also need to show your children what the world's like. Okay, so when I tell my children not to do drugs, you know what I'm going to do? What I do is I take them to the homeless shelters. I take them to the prisons. I take them to the streets, and I show them what happens when you're on drugs. Because you can tell people not to do drugs all day long, but unless you show them the results, and your children especially, because children always want to know why. That's the one question they ask: why? And when you take them and show them why, it's important. But you need to. That's something that's really valuable to them, because they'll never forget that image of the junkie that is almost dying on the bed because they have AIDS, or they've done drugs their whole life. They'll never forget that face of that person filled with regret that's sitting in the prison for the rest of their life. They'll never forget that, and that's something valuable. You have to teach children, and even if you're in homeschool, you don't need to shelter them by letting them know what's going on, because I've seen a lot of sheltered kids come out the gate and just turn into an atheist and buck wild within, kind of like the Amish do when they leave the Amish paradise. They go and they taste the world for everything that it has because they don't know anything else. So,
I thank you so much, John. I mean, your words are, I can't tell you. This has been one of the most insightful and interesting interviews that I have done since I began this show. Now, your work is so crucial. How do people find you, John?
Well, I'm on Facebook, John Pounders, and the name's spelled exactly like it sounds, like a quarter pounder with cheese. You just put the pounder with an S on the end. There's not very many pounders out there, so it shouldn't be hard to find me. John Pounders. You can go to Now You See TV on YouTube or type in NYSTV. A good Google search, you'll find me pretty easy, and you guys can always get a hold of me the best you can. I can't promise to answer every email or every message. I try. But I'm answering all my own emails for me. I have a business I run too, so I have service emails. So I get to them the best that I can. Sometimes it takes me like a week or something to get to all of them, but I try my best to do it. So you feel free to message me or whatever. But yeah, I appreciate that. That's the best way to get a hold of me is just find me on there. And my email is nowuctv@gmail.com. So there's an email you can get in touch with me at as well.
Well, listen, my wife loves your channel. I mean, she loves the teachings that you put out there.
It's awesome.
And we really hope that you can make it to hear the Watchmen in Dallas. I mean, we really do. I want you to contact my wife, and off air, I'll give you her contact information. But John, what you are doing is truly the Spirit of the Lord. I mean, it's truly what God wants us to do. It's so difficult sometimes for us to as we get older, okay, we focus on like other people just like us, and we try to teach them and help them. But it's so wonderful that what you're doing is you're going in there in the belly of the beast. You're going in there and you are helping the children to come to God. And so, folks, I really want you to follow John. I want you to follow him. I want you to listen to him. I want you to just get with what he's doing. I mean, it's something else. I mean, it's amazing what he does and how hard he's working. So, John, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you so much for what you're doing.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. And I appreciate the opportunity to come on and talk with you. I've been wanting to connect with you for a while because in the same way you respect what I do, I respect what you do. And I'm thankful for what you guys are doing because there's so many people coming into the truth and they're seeing things. And it's just great to be able to house that and to just curve that curiosity towards the scripture because you see ancient alien shows out there. You see all these different things out there that are leading people straight to the devil, but to be able to curve that interest back to the Most High, the Father, is a amazing thing, and it's so needed. I mean, how many people are coming, and there's not enough. There's not enough of us out there, but we're thankful. Just like you, I'm thankful to be able to do anything. I don't deserve to be here. I don't deserve to do anything, but I'm thankful that the Father chose to use a guy like me because there's a lot more qualified people out there. So.
Well, John, again, thank you so much. So listen, folks, that brings this to a conclusion today. So folks, go to Now You See TV. I mean, go there, check it out, see what John's doing. And I'm telling you, it'll change your life. I mean, it will really change your life and it'll change your children's lives. So until the next time we see you here on the Watchman's Report, remember one thing. You can do anything with Jesus in your heart, except nothing at all. So get out there, get busy, activate, and do what Jesus wants us to do. God bless each and every one of you. We'll see you next time here on the Watchman's Report.